A warm welcome to you all. We had a lecture on dynamics of machines. So, how the dynamics of machines comes from. So, we have to be know the subject theory of machines. It is defined as that a branch of science which deals with a study of relative motions between the various parts of the machines and the force acting on them. So, what is that relative motions means? So, the motion of an object or observer with respect to the other object, another object. So and the force acting on them. So this is the theory of machines. So what are the branches or categories of theory of machines? Or kinematics, dynamics, kinetics, and statics. So what is that kinematic means? So we have to be know what is that kinematics. What are the basic things? Or that is it is a branch of a theory of machines which deals with relative motions between the various parts of the machines. I already said as that what is that a relative motion means? The motion of object or observer with respect to the other object. So this is that kinematics. So next the dynamics. Dynamics is that uh, that deals with the force and their effects. It's also the branch of theory of machines. It will deals with the force and their effects while acting upon parts in the motion. So here in a kinematics, the relative motions, the study of the relative motions. So in dynamics, in that motion, how the force has acting, and with that force what are the effects has been made. This is the study of dynamics. And the next is kinetics. It is that a branch of theory of machines which deals with inertia force which arise from the combined effect of the mass and motion of the machine parts. Here, what is that inertia force means? It is a type of force, so which arise due to the acceleration or deceleration of the body. So, for example, when a vehicle is made and accelerate or decelerate or change of directions, what will be happening is the passenger inside of the vehicle may feel a force pushing them in opposite directions. So this is the inertia force. So this force will result from their resistance to change in motions. So this is the kinetics and the statics. So what is meant by statics is it is that deals with that force and their efforts while the machine parts are at rest. The body is at a rest, is that a static bodies. So the mass of the part is to be negligible. So what are the fundamental concept have to be know before entering into the subject is a space. What is that a space means? It is a region which extend in all directions and contains everything in it. So we are all know about what is that a space means. So in each and every area, the space is called as a space. The position of body in a space determined with respect to a reference system. So the time. So what is that a time means? It's a section of an event. It is not as sufficient to indicate their positions. It's a event. Okay. So it can be measured each every succession of events is that a measure of that a succession event is that a time. Then next one is that a matter. So what is that a matter? It's kind of any substance which occupies a space. It is made of an atoms and molecules. So body, what is that? Body is a any matter that is bounded by closed surface. So it's kind of a closed surface. We call it as a human as a body. So why they call it as a body is the substance inside of our body has been closely packed by means of that skin. It is called as a body. So rigid body. What is that? A rigid body is it is that does not change their shapes or size when subject to the external force. When external force is applied to that body, it doesn't change their shape or size. It is called the rigid body. Deformable bodies, when it give a external force to that body, it can be changed their shape or size of the body. So rigid body means it cannot be changed their original positions or size or shape. So deformable body means it will be changed their position, shape or size when the external force is applied in that body. So the next one is mass. So what is that? Mass is a quantity of matter it contains. It doesn't vary with the locations and the orientation of the body. Okay, so what is that? A mass is, it's a kind of a substance. It may be the unit of that mass is that a kilograms. So if you are waiting, you are going for any shop, and then you have purchased any kind of vegetables or anything. So it will be giving an kg weight. That is that a mass. So it is a quantity of matter. Quantity means a large quantity of vegetables. It will be made as a mass. So the mass is called that a quantity of matter. So next one is that a particle. So what is that? A particle means a body of negligible dimensions. It occupies no space, that is no size, but it has a definite mass considered at a point. So particles. Okay. So next is the inertia. So inertia means a resistance offered by the matter to any change of its state of motion. So it is that a inertia. The next one is solid, a substance possessing a definite shapes and definite volume is called a solid. A solid particles or solid any kind of solids is called a substance possessing a defined shape or a definite volumes. It have some volumes. So force, what is that? Force is, it is a pull or push which acting on a body changes or tends to change then the state of rest or uniform motion of the body. So if you are made external any kind of things to that body, it will be changed their positions when from rest positions. Okay, so it completely categorized by its point of applications, its magnitude and directions. So here a forced system. Next one is that a forced system or system of force. So when a number of force act on a body, is that a force? Okay. So next we move on to that a weight. What does that weight means? A weight of the body is that a force with the earth attract the body towards its center. So every body have its center of gravity. So what is that center of gravity is? All the body having a force move on to the center of that object. So that is that weight. That is that weight W equal to mass into G. What is that? G is a center of gravity. So equilibrium. Next one is a equilibrium. A body acted upon by a system of force is said to be a equilibrium. If it either remains in its state of rest or continues to move in a straight line with uniform velocity, it is that a equilibrium. The next one is motion. Your body is to be in a motion when it changes its positions with respect to the other body. So thus the relative change in their position is called motions. Motion involves both the space and the time. So now move on to that basic law have to be known the concepts of engineering is Newton's law of motion. There are three laws that Newton has been erected, that three laws. What are the three laws is? So first law, every body continue its state of rest or uniform motion in a straight line unless an external resultant force acting on it. So any kind of external resultant force acting on that, if the train is going on their own track without any disturbance, without any external force as in between of the train, it will be never deviate their directions. If it any external force, resultant force is acting on the track means it will be get deviated. That is the first law of Newton law of motions. The second law, the rate of change of momentum of body is directly proportional to the force acting on it and take place in the directions of the force. Is the second law. The third law, to every actions there is an equal and opposite directions. So this is the third law of Newton's. Now move on to the subject. So what is that dynamics of machines and what are the basic things you are learned is enough, friend. So now move on to the subject is the unit one is that a force analysis already. So what is that force? I already said about what is that force means. Mass into acceleration is that a force. So okay, so here the static force and the dynamic force, there are two kinds of force which will be act. So static force, when the inertia effect due to the mass of the machine's components are neglected in the analysis of mechanisms. So it is that a static force analysis. Dynamic force analysis, when the inertia force are considered in the analysis of mechanisms. So in a static force, the inertia force has been neglected. In dynamic force analysis, the inertia force has been considered. These are the two different types of forces analysis. So what is that inertia force means? A force equal in magnitude but opposite in the direction and collinear with impressed force producing the acceleration is known as that inertia force. Here the inertia force is that a mass into acceleration. This is that inertia force. Inertia torque. So here next one is the inertia torque. What is that inertia torque means? The inertia torque is an imaginary torque which when applied upon the rigid body brings in its an equilibrium positions. It equal to the accelerating couple in magnitude but opposite in the directions. So this is the inertia torque. The next one is D'Albert's principle. So D'Albert's principle states that the resultant force acting on the body together with reversed effective force, that is the inertia force, or in equilibrium, the summation of force is equal to 0. This is the Albert principles. So what is that Albert has been said is the resultant force acting on the body, it will be get reversed their effective of the force, that inertia effort has been reversed. So that is that, or in equilibrium. So this is the Albert principles. So here the the velocity and acceleration of the reciprocating parts of the steam engine or internal combustion engine may be determined by means of a graphical method or an analytical method. So we move on to that dynamic analysis of reciprocating parts. What is that reciprocating part? Is a to and fro motion of that body. Is that a dynamic analysis? Is that a reciprocating mass? So here a reciprocating engine I'm going to be elaborate the velocity and acceleration of the reciprocating part of the steam engine or an internal combustion engines may be determined by means of graphical method or by means of an analytical method. The velocity and acceleration by graphical method may be determined by one of the following construction: line constructions, Etehaus constructions, and Bennett constructions. So in analytical method, this is the diagrammatic constructions of the steam engine, okay, or reciprocating engine. So here I already said about that. What is that here the steam engine or internal combustion engine? So both the engines has been reciprocated. So this engine is that a reciprocating engine or a steam engine, okay. So here the P dash and the P is that in that positions we are giving as a pistons, and CP is that a connecting rod, and CO is that a crank, okay. So this is that a diagrammatical representation of that steam engine. Then so let OC is that a crank, and PC is that a connecting rod, and the crank rotates with an angular velocity. The dotted lines it will be giving in the clockwise or anti-clockwise of the rotation of the crank. So when the crank rotates with an angular velocity of radians per seconds, that is that revolutions per seconds, radians per seconds, the crank turned through an angle theta, so that the angle have been varied, that CO or OC, the crank the angle have been varied through an angle of theta from that inner dead center. So IDC means inner dead center, and a right side ODC, outer dead center. So inner side of your circle is called inner dead center, outer side of your circle is called outer dead center. So the crank rotates or change their position of that crank from inner dead center. The angle can be varied. So it is that inner dead center. Okay, let x be the displacement. Here the x, what is that x is that a displacement of the reciprocating body from P. So the P is that a initial position of that object. It will be get displaced from one position to the another position when the engine is reciprocated. So with that time at t second during the crank turned through an angle of theta. So let L, what is that L is? The small L. It will be indicate in between that CP and in between the CP. The small L is that length of the connecting rod between its centers. Okay. Then smaller is the radius of the crank or crank pin circle. So theta. What is the theta? Is the inclination of the crank to the line of stroke. Then small n. So small n is that ratio of length of connecting rod to the radius of the crank. So this will be in here. So what is that? A small l is that a length of the connecting rod between the centers, or is the radius of the crank or crank means circle. Theta is the inclination of the crank to the line of stroke. Then n is the ratio of the length of the connecting rod to the radius of the crank, that means L by R. Then move on to that velocity of the pistons. You have to be find out what is the velocity of the pistons by means of the derivations. So from the geometry, so here the first geometry. So in this diagram, how it will be narrated, the derivation is, so x, let x is that displacement. Okay, so what is that displacement? X is that the p dash and the p. So what is that? The p dash and the p is here. So p to the p dash is that the displacement, or it is called as an op dash minus of op. Okay, then it will be get reiterated by means of p dash c dash plus c dash o minus of pq plus qo. Since so pq is L cos pi and qo is R cos theta, so we can substitute instead of pq and qo L cos pi or sin cos theta, means it will, the equations will be rewritten as that L plus R minus of L cos pi R into cos theta. Okay, so we have to be rearrange that equation by means of that. What we multiplied into the two paragraph, that will be get a R of 1 minus cos theta plus L into 1 of minus cos pi. Okay, so we are taking it that the LCM of that equation is R into 1 minus cos theta plus L by R 1 minus cos pi. So we simplify of this equation is L by R is already said about that n. So what is that? N is ratio of the length of the connecting rod to the radius of the crank is that L by R. So you have to be change of that L by R into n. This is considered as the first equations. Then next, from the triangle of CPQ and CQO. So where it is been. So from the diagram, so CPQ, then and CQO, from the triangle of CQP and then CQO, there are true triangle. So CQ is that you're getting a CQ is L sin pi equal to R sin theta, or L by R equal to sin theta by sin pi. So here by L by R means n. Okay, so n equal to sin theta divided by sin pi, or sin pi equal to sin theta by n. So we have to be cross multiply of this. So sin pi is go for that in position of n, and then n will become the denominator of that position. So n equal to sin theta by sin pi, or sin pi equal to sin theta by n. This is that I consider as the equations 2. Already we know about that cos pi equal to 1 minus sin square pi to the whole of half 1 by 2. So we have to be rewrite of this equation. Sin square pi is, what is that? Sin square pi is sin square theta divided by n square. Okay, so expanding the above expression by means of the binomial theorem, we can get the cos pi equal to 1 minus 1 by 2 into sin square theta divided by n square infinity, neglecting here higher terms. So we they have to be take that 1 into that left side, means 1 minus cos pi equal to sin square theta divided by 2n square. Okay, so substituting the value of 1 minus cos pi in the equations of 1. So what, where have to be substitute that 1 minus cos pi in the equations of 1? Where is it have to be substituted? So instead of that, R into 1 minus cos theta plus n into 1 minus cos pi, you have to be replace that 1 minus cos pi instead of that equations. So we are getting a equations of x equal to R into 1 minus cos theta plus n into sin square theta by n square, 2n square. So you have to be rewrite this equation is R into 1 minus cos theta plus sin square theta divided by 2n, the n square. that n and the n square has been cancelled, we are getting a 1n. So n sine square theta divided by 2n. So this considers the fourth equations. So differentiating that fourth equations with respect to the theta. So with respect to theta, you have to be differentiate that the above equations. So we getting a equations of r of sine theta plus 1 by 2 n into 2 sine theta cos theta. We're getting as r into sine theta plus 2 sine 2 theta divided by n, since the 2 sine theta cos theta is instead of a sine 2 theta. So we're getting the equations of that. So therefore the velocity of the P with respect to O, or velocity of the piston P, is in this that I have to be fine. Velocity of the piston have to be fine. So Vp equal to dx divided by dt, the differentiation of that equations. Okay, so dx by dt is, what is the dx by dt is dx by d theta into d theta divided by dt equal to dx by d theta into omega. What is that? Omega is rate of change of their angular velocity. Okay, so you have to be change over that d theta divided by dt instead of omega. So substitute the value of dx by d theta from the equations of 5. Okay, so we're getting equations of vpo equal to vp equal to that omega into r sine theta plus sine 2 theta divided by 2n. So this is the sixth equations we are identify from that above terms. So next, up to this, we are finding of the velocity of the pistons. So what is that formula of the velocity of the piston is? So Vp equal to omega r into sine theta plus sine 2 theta divided by 2n. So we have to be we're using this formula, we are finding of the velocity of the piston value. Next one is acceleration of the piston. So this is the next likewise, like velocity of the piston, we have to be narrate the equations of acceleration of the pistons. So here ap equal to dvp divided by dt. So you have to be the differentiation of that velocity of the piston equations. So dvp divided by dt equal to dvp by d theta into d theta divided by dt. So already we said that d theta by dt is that angular velocity, that means omega. Though the above equation has to be differentiated. So dvp by d theta equal to omega r into cos theta plus cos 2 theta divided by into 2 divided by 2n. So we have to be reframe of this equation is omega into r cos theta plus cos 2 theta divided by n. Here we have to be substitute the value of dvp divided by d theta. What we'll be getting is the above equations we have ap, that means acceleration of the piston equal to omega into r cos theta plus cos 2 theta divided by n into omega. So omega into omega is that omega square. So we're getting a omega square into r of cos theta plus cos 2 theta divided by n. So this is the formula to find out that acceleration of the piston. So velocity of the piston, what is that formula is? So you're getting the acceleration of the velocity of the piston value. Formula is Vp equal to omega into r sine theta plus sine 2 theta divided by 2n. So acceleration of the piston value, formula is omega square into r cos theta plus cos 2 theta divided by n. So this is the formula we have been narrated from that above expressions. So here, what are the conditions you have to be apply the acceleration of the piston is, when the crank is at the inner dead center, the theta value will be a 0. You are substituting the theta value 0 means you are getting equations of omega square into r when cos 0 degree is 1. So 1 plus 1 by n. So when at outer dead center, when the crank is at the outer dead center means the theta value is at a 180 degree. So we have to be substitute the theta instead of theta. Substitute 180 means we are getting a minus 1 of 1 plus 1 by n. Omega square into r into minus 1 plus 1 by n. So this is the conditions we have to be applied. The next is a piston effort. So what will be the effort act on the piston is that here. So it is that a net force acting on the piston or crosshead pin along the line of stroke. It is denoted by Fp. So here we have to be narrate that piston effort formula. Okay, so this is the conditions we have to be apply that. So Fp is the net load on the pistons plus or minus the inertia force. Here you have to be neglect the frictional resistance. So what will be that equations will become is FL plus or minus Fi minus RF. RF is that a frictional resistance. The negative sign is to be a piston is accelerated. The positive sign will be a decelerated. That means retracted, disaccelerate of that piston. Okay. In a double acting a reciprocating steam engine. So in before that this is a single acting, and now the double acting cylinder, what will be the FL value is P1 minus A1 P2 A2 equal to P1 A1 minus P2 of A1 minus A. So P1 A2 is that a pressure and the cross sectional area of the back end side of the piston. P28 is that a pressure on the cross sectional area of the crank inside of the piston. A is the cross sectional area of the pistons. So here also like the conditions has been given. And the second one is force acting along the connecting rod. That means FQ. So what is the formula of that is FP divided by cos pi. We know that cos pi is equal to 1 root of 1 minus sin square theta divided by n. So what will be the form equation is FQ equal to FP divided by, you have to be instead of cos pi, you have to be made this equation is FP divided by root of 1 minus sin square theta divided by n square. The next is thrust on the sides of the cylinder walls or the normal reaction of the guide bars Fn. So what will be the Fn formula is Fq into sin pi. So what will be the Fq is Fp by cos pi into sin pi. So here what will be get is sin pi by cos pi is there at tan pi. So Fp equal to, sorry, Fp tan pi. That is the formula of that. So crank pin effort. Next one is the crank pin effort Ft. So Ft equal to Fq sine of theta plus pi. So sine of theta plus pi. So you have to be reframe of these equations. Fq instead of that is Fp by cos pi into sine theta plus pi. So this is the crank pin effort. Next is the thrust on the crankshaft bearing. It will be denoted as a Fb. So Fb equal to Fq cos of theta plus pi. So likewise that Fq, you have to be rewrite of that Fq equal in terms of that Fp by cos pi into cos of theta plus pi. So last one, it will be the crank effort or turning moment or torque on the crankshaft. Here this is the important thing you have to be find, that is the turning moment. So for the turning moment, the product of the crank pin effort and the crank pin radius is that a crank effort or turning moment or torque on the crankshaft. So that is the formula is T equal to F into R. So this is the force analysis. These are the terms you have to be used for the force analysis. So thank you for be a pleasure for that. Thank you.